Now, from the House Foreign Relations Committee, Florida Congresswoman Maria Salazar. Great to see you, Congresswoman. Thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure to be with you in person.
And such an important story. Is the Cuban regime entering its final chapter?
Thank God for that. And I agree with what the president is saying and what Marco, who happens to be my constituent, you know, we're Cuban Americans from Miami. And you know, what Trump is doing is what Kennedy never did. He imposed an embargo 65 years ago, only on paper, but never in practice. So Cuba is the epicenter, is the headquarters of evil in the Western Hemisphere. So we're going to be much better. The American people are going to be much better, and the Cubans in Miami.
So what do you want to see done here? Tell me about the backdrop. Explain to our audience what this regime is all about and what you want to see done.
Well, this is the Cuba. Fidel Castro wrote the manual on repression. 100 years from now, historians are going to look at Fidel Castro and say, this guy was able to supersede Lenin and Stalin because he not only was able to grab power, but to maintain it through repressive apparatus. Yeah. What Marco Rubio was saying is true. I mean, they don't have food, they don't have water, they don't have electricity. And Cuba had the highest per capita income in 1960. That's why Kennedy was so important. So Cuba, but not only that, is that Venezuela existed, Nicaragua existed because of Cuba. Because Fidel was a genius at evil, and right now they're ending those. Their days are numbered. Thank God.
Wow, and the people understand this.
Of course, the people in Miami, the people that I represent, and the people on the island. Remember that 2 years ago, you had hundreds of thousands of Cubans on the streets with this type of sign, which means L, which means libertad, freedom, and they were repressed brutally. Internet was shut down, obviously, like in Iran, because they don't want the regime does not want the international community to see what they're doing to their own people.
Wow.
But right now, Trump is daring to do, once again, the same thing he did with Venezuela. He's doing something that no other president since Ronald Reagan dared to do, which is to force these people to open up, to bring transparent elections, which is what happened Reagan with the Sandinistas.
Yeah.
And now this is the next time. So Trump is the next Reagan in the hemisphere.
Unbelievable. In fact, the president is ordering the immediate reopening of commercial airspace over Venezuela, and he's going to allow Chevron to boost exports of Venezuelan oil to the United States to some 300,000 barrels a day. Here's what the Secretary of the Interior, Doug Burgum, told me Friday. Watch.
That oil coming out, being sold on the global market for the first time. A lot of this oil from Venezuela was being sold in basically the black market on the dark fleets. And Venezuela has just become another one of China's discount gas stations. Right now, with the President Trump and his plan on controlling the sales, controlling the revenue, that's what allows the collaboration with the current government in Venezuela, and it's what's going to help put this country on a track towards rebuilding their industry. Remember, Venezuela could be Caracas could be the next Dubai under the right economic conditions.
With MCM.
That was an incredible comment, I thought. The next Dubai?
Of course, because they are the Saudi Arabia in Spanish. They have the largest reserves of oil in the world.
Well, Dubai doesn't have oil, though. I mean, but I understand the analysis.
And with Maria Corina Machado, who has promised and has signaled Washington and the president that she's going to be highly friendly, very friendly to the oil companies, which is every time I spoke with her, I told her, we would like the American companies to have the access to the oil rigs, and they will. So what Trump is doing in the Western Hemisphere is something that hasn't happened in the last 60 years, just because he has the political pants. He has the fortitude to do this just like no other. So we are delighted. Not only Miami, I represent hundreds of thousands of Cubans and Venezuelans, but the whole region. You know, they love the United States. They don't want to do business with China or with Russia or with Iran. It's just that the Americans were completely absent, but now we're back.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
So fantastic. Meanwhile, President Trump, big news of the weekend, the president tapping former Federal Reserve official Kevin Warsh to replace Jay Powell. This is the president's choice for the next chairman of the Fed. You're part of the House Financial Services Committee. Do you think you're going to see pushback here? Is he going to be able to get confirmed? You're already seeing Tom Tillis say, I'm not going to vote because of the probe underway of the Fed currently and Jay Powell.
Listen, I think that if the president sends that nominee, I'm sure that we're going to work with him because we all want to push the economy forward. And if this is the person who was chosen by the president, I think we should definitely support him.
So I know you do, but there are people in the Senate, certainly Democrats, they don't want the president's agenda to continue. They're trying to upend the agenda at any turn, including Tom Tillis not wanting his chairman to be confirmed.
Hey, I'm sure that once the president makes those phone calls, the average American viewer and the American voter wants the economy to continue growing. I know that the economy is not doing as well as some people would like to. I know we have an issue with immigration, but at the same time, look at what's happening. Look at the big picture, and the big picture is that we're doing pretty well. Look at the last 4 years. Now the border is secured. We do have to change immigration laws in order to continue being the country that we are.
What do you want to say about immigration right now?
First and foremost, help the American worker. But if that position, it cannot be filled by an American, then we have to bring an immigrant. And those who are here, who've been working for more than 5 years, that do not have a criminal record, that have been contributing to the economy, that may have American kids, don't deport them. Don't give them path to citizenship. Don't give them amnesty. Give them dignity.
Congresswoman, thank you.